Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Daljeet Kaur. I welcome all of you to this webinar on ensuring employment support in mental health. We've got our panelists here, and the attendees will be joining in due course. We've got few of here. Welcome. So, this topic, this topic of ensuring employment support came because of our social initiative, which is called Recovery Hub. Recovery Hub is an initiative, which is a non-for-profit initiative that is focusing purely on people with mental health issues and mainly so targeting the population where people had mental health issues, they've got better. So got better does not mean they're off their medication or don't have to still see a psychiatrist or psychologist. Got better would mean that they have reached to a certain point where they're fit to work. As you're familiar with the concept, if someone's not well, they go to the hospital and then the doctor is asked to write a note saying this person is fit to work and has to go back. So we're talking about people who've reached to that stage. And then when we feel these people are there, well, they shouldn't be at a disadvantage because they might have missed a year of their life, probably because they might have had like a psychotic illness or so. So there are different kind of illnesses, something like depression, anxiety, is much milder and people might not have to take off for longer time. But other issues like bipolar illness, psychosis, and so on are severe and enduring mental illness, which means once they're there, they're probably going to go on for quite some time. And once they start, which they can start either in teenage years or early 20s, sometimes people have to take few months off either from their college years or at work because of the sudden onset of the disease. But they do get better with medication, counseling, and everything. And that is the point. We do not want people to be at disadvantage just because they've missed a few months or a year. So this whole social initiative is to help these kind of people get into either internships or jobs. And I've got my team members here who will be talking about all these things in detail. So I was just looking, trying to explore, is it just me? Is it just my team thinking about this, or are people around the world also looking into this? So I was going through the WHO guidelines. There's an article from September 2022, the recent one. It talks about the WHO guidelines on mental health at work. It provides evidence-based recommendations in 3 areas. The 3 areas are: one is to promote mental health, the second is to prevent mental health conditions, and the third is to enable people living with mental health conditions to participate and thrive in work. And this is the third criteria that is very relevant to us. So it's not just us, it's obviously the WHO setting guidelines on this. And it also talks about the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And there is an agreement here. So when we talk about disability, these are promoting the rights of people with disabilities. It could just be a psychosocial disability, it could be a mental health disability. We're not focusing on the physical health disability in this webinar. So for people with psychosocial disabilities, including at work, the UN Convention has looked into agreements, and one of the recommendations from WHO was to support people with mental health conditions to participate in and thrive at work. The interventions they have suggested is: one, to make reasonable accommodations at work. And Dr. Arif, who's our occupational health expert, will talk in detail about what kind of accommodations the organizations would need. So it would be something like extra time to complete the task, or modify few assignments so the person doesn't get stressed, and so on. And the other thing, the intervention that they suggested was to organize return to work programs. So as I told you, some people might have not started their employment because they've developed an illness, but after 6 months or 1 year, they're fine. Some people would have developed the illness while they were already at work. So for these people, we need to organize some return to work programs. And then the third intervention suggested by WHO was to offer supported employment initiatives. So obviously one is probably like ours, Recovery Hub, and many other people would be looking into different kind of initiatives. For now, Recovery Hub was started a few months ago, and we have our partners. We have different partners, and we have, Ms. Jaya from Chase Legal, who's also attending this webinar. So they are our legal partners. We have mental health partners, by Asha Hospital. We have health partners from Apollo MedSkills. We have psychology partners from Hope Trust, and we have upskilling partners by Edify Path. And there are a lot of expectations from us about partnerships, volunteering, and actually for organizations to take up this initiative. Let me just remind you, this is basically a non-for-profit initiative. So we are all here just to look at, creating some supported initiatives for people with mental health to get back into work. So that is just an introduction as to why we, thought of or starting this webinar. How will this benefit people, our clients, which we will be referring to as service users? Is obviously anyone would want to be in employment, they would want to have an income, and it will promote their sense of purpose and well-being. And we want them also to have that right and not be excluded for no fault of theirs. If you just look at people around you, every family, in every family or every few families, you'll feel that, there's either one member or two people, who are probably struggling with their mental health issues. So this is about creating an environment where everyone is able to get the support. So having said that, what we will do is we've got our panelists here, our team members who would be talking about different aspects of Recovery Hub. And what I'll do is I'll first, welcome Dr. Arif, who is currently talking to us from UK, and it's early morning there. So thanks, Arif, for joining. It's peak winter and you're here. And he's an occupational health physician, and he's worked in different roles in NHS. And I'll let him introduce himself. And then I will be asking him a few questions that he would be addressing.
Okay, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon back in India. So my name, as Daljeet said, Dr. Arif Mudarit. I'm currently an occupational health physician working in the public sector with one of the police forces in the northwest of England. My background, I did my basic surgical training and then moved into occupational medicine about 10, 12 years ago. I've worked across with a lot of private and public sector clients, including Nissan, and also Qatar Petroleum. So Daljeet contacted me about a year or 2 years ago to discuss, the challenges that she had been facing with rehabilitating people with mental health issues back into work. And she had sort of got my advice, and we had sort of had a brainstorming session, I remember, about it, to try and find ways to support people back into work. And it's something that I'm very, very sort of passionate about. And I know that there are sort of gaps in the understanding and sort of the approach towards rehabilitating people with mental health conditions. In addition to what I do in the UK, I'm also an honorary consultant for the National Health Mission in the state of Tamil Nadu, and helping with their occupational health service in the informal sector. But we don't focus too much on the mental health side there. It's mostly on the physical side. So I decided to come on board, and what I'm going to do today is just give you a general outline about the global context and the current stance in relation to how mental health is seen as a disability. I'm not a legal expert, occupational physician, but we do sort of try and apply the legal aspects to it in our day-to-day practice. So what I will do is I'll just sort of share my screen.
Yeah, so Arif, other than what you just mentioned, if you could also then after that talk about how we do the occupational health assessment in recovery, what aspects we look at. Thank you.
That's fine. So, just to give you a bit of a steer about mental health as a disability, in the United Kingdom and in the European Union, disability is what is deemed as a protected characteristic under the in the UK under the Equality Act 2010, and there is a clear definition for what disability means. So the individual should either have a physical or a mental impairment or both. And it should have what is known as substantial and long-term negative effect on their ability to do their normal day-to-day living activities. What they mean by substantial is anything more than minor or trivial, i.e. it should affect your ability to do your day-to-day living activities at home or at work. Long term is anything that has lasted beyond 12 months or likely to last beyond 12 months. Now, when you're looking at long term, the guidance also takes into account treatment and the effect of treatment in the control of the condition. So, for instance, people who have well-controlled diabetes would still be classed as being disabled because we would take into account how their diabetes would be if they were not on medication to control the condition. Does that make sense? So with mental health, especially bipolar mood disorders, schizoaffective disorders, recurrent depressive disorders, they are likely to be classed as long-term because they would most likely need medication to try and control their symptoms. Some tribunals have ruled that psychological therapies such as CBT are also deemed as treatment that would keep a mental health condition under control, and therefore people who are not on medication but having long-term CBT, their condition is also likely to be classed as long-term because they would look at the impact of the mental health condition without CBT and they would be much worse and they would be functionally disabled as a result of it. As I said, I'm not a legal expert, but having had some kind of background experience of working in the UK and advising employers with regards to fitness for work and advising on workplace rehabilitation, the implications of disability being a protected characteristic in the UK is that employers must not discriminate directly or indirectly against an individual on grounds of disability. And there is a duty to make reasonable adjustments at work to accommodate an individual's disability. So if an individual feels that they've not made reasonable adjustments, they can go to an employment tribunal and challenge the employer on it. The onus is on employers to not discriminate against individuals with mental health at pre-employment or whilst in employment. That's very important as well. If somebody is dismissed from work on grounds of medical capability, especially if due process has not been followed, whereby employers have not explored reasonable adjustments at work to try and help them function better in the workplace, then it could be seen as disability discrimination. And there's a lot of case law and legal guidance that is there that looks at unfair dismissal on grounds of disability discrimination. So, we had a recent discussion about disability legislation in India and just sort of extracting this information from a discussion that we had recently. So I think, and I understand there are some legal experts in the audience today, so do feel free to correct me if I've misinterpreted. So the Rights of Persons with Disability Act, I think, lays down penalties and procedures for dealing with complaints relating to discrimination. And as you can see, you can make complaints about exploitation. Now, my understanding based on the discussion is that a lot of it is a very penalizing approach rather than rehabilitative approach. If we can see the difference between what the law under the Equality Act says and the disability legislation says, I don't think there's duty to make reasonable adjustments there yet. It may possibly come in the future in India, and I think it's still evolving. The understanding of rehabilitation and supporting people with mental health illnesses at work is still an evolving area, both within psychiatry and also within sort of workplace health and community medicine, so to speak. So at some point, hopefully, there may be clauses added to the existing legislation to try and place more onus and responsibility on employers to support people at work and also sort of not enforce, but encourage them to make reasonable adjustments. So looking at the role of occupational health in Recovery Hub. So what I'll do is I'll talk a bit about what I sort of support with from an occupational health perspective. So what normally happens is that Daljeet and her team have individuals who are identified as suitable candidates, and we provide them with a questionnaire that gives a general idea about their background experience and their current health issues, and also what they struggle with in terms of a functional aspect. Now, this is very important because it's very important to differentiate the difference between what is a clinical symptom and what is the resultant functional impact. So in occupational health, what we're doing is we're doing a functional assessment, which looks at what is the functional impact of the clinical symptoms. So in mental health, if somebody has low mood, how does it functionally impact them? Does it impact them in terms of their ability to sleep, ability to concentrate, mental fatigue, energy levels, ability to sort of engage in society, so anxiety-related symptoms, things like that. So we look at the functional assessment. So can somebody travel to work on their own? Can somebody get up and get dressed and go to work on their own, or do they need prompting on a day-to-day basis? So that is the functional assessment. That's not a clinical symptom. So what we then do is we look at support measures and workplace adjustments to help an employee based on what their functional levels are and what support we can provide to help improve their functional ability. So for instance, I've listed some illustrative examples about adjustments. So let's say we have an individual with an anxiety disorder who has anxiety when talking to a group of people. So in the UK, sometimes what they do is they provide an individual to accompany them to the interview. So the individual sits there and gives them moral support, whereas the individual then proceeds with the interview. Other examples of adjustments, again, I do some examining work for the GMC as well, and people with anxiety sometimes may struggle with time pressures. So what they may do is look at giving them an extra minute or so within a station as a reasonable adjustment. Similar kind of adjustments are possible within the workplace. In India, the workplaces are no different wherever you go in the world. An office is an office. It's how you accommodate the individual in the office that's very, very important in the understanding. And that's where we come in from an occupational perspective and give that guidance. So I've given examples about phased introduction into work. So especially people who have been off work for more than 12 months, you would want them to gradually phase themselves back into work. So let's say if they're doing an 8-hour shift, they start off with doing 2.5 or 3 hours per day and then gradually build up their working hours over a period of 4 to 6 weeks. What is very important is that their workload is titrated accordingly. So they're not given a full workload whilst they're working after working hours. It should be proportionate to their working hours, and you proportionately increase their workload. And that's another workplace adjustment that's commonly used in the UK as well. Some people, especially individuals with bipolar mood disorder, probably need a very stable sleep-wake cycle or circadian rhythm. So shift work exemption, i.e. exempting them from night shift work, is another adjustment that's commonly advised as well. And it's not just bipolar mood disorder, but other sort of challenging mood disorders where a good and consistent sleep cycle is very, very important. And depending on the job and the type of work that's done, in some jobs it is possible to accommodate it. Again, people with anxiety disorders, placing employees in quieter areas of office, reduce workload, stress management,
So
all those are adjustments.
Arif, I'll just interrupt here. I'm just aware of the time.
Yep.
So
Yep.
That's great. You've given us, an idea of how things are working globally, and especially so in UK. And we've also, so what we've done is obviously we've done assessments for people, and Dr. Arif has looked into it, has produced a report or so. So what would normally happen is that report, if the person, if our service user would consent, would actually go to the employer, and Namrita would be telling us about the process later on. I just wanted to give you a quick example maybe of the kind of clients we are talking about here in Recovery Hub, because we've assessed few people. So, and if I give you an example, it would be like a 28-year-old female who's had 3 years, mental health issues for the past 3 years, but her background is of BTech, and she's already pursuing distance learning in foreign languages, and now she was looking for a full-time paid work. and her target industry was either technology, like she was interested in digital marketing, sales. She could work in library because she liked reading. She was also open to the idea of being an entrepreneur. Same way, we had someone else who had background of PCOM, in her early 20s. She had no experience, no work experience at all. And she was looking for some part-time work, and her target industry was more of hospitality. So this is just to give you a flavor as to, different kind of service users we would be looking at. So thank you, Arif. If you want to close your presentation. I would now like to invite Mr. Mahesh, who is the strategy advisor to Recovery Hub, and he's an angel investor, and he'll talk about himself. What I would ask him to talk to you all is about the need for the organizations to create an environment for people, that recovered from mental health issues. And why is diversity and inclusion so important or good for corporates? And once you've spoken about that, maybe you can touch a little bit about why should these organizations then look at partnering with us, and how should we take these things forward? Yeah, welcome, Mahesh.
Thank you, Daljeet. So, just a quick introduction about myself. I've spent most of my time in corporate roles. In sales, marketing, and general management across FMCG and consumer durable brands like ITC, General Mills, Goodyear, Samsung, Philips, Whirlpool. So most of my experience is in corporate India, in in various CXO roles. And what I would like to bring in as a value add to this conversation is more of an outside-in approach. Like, we are all involved in making Recovery Hub become a significant contributor to environment and to society, and help people with mental illness, adjust to the corporate environments. I would like to put myself on the shoes of a person who's working in an organization and looking at, why do we need diversity? Why do we need why do you need to have people with different abilities to be in the organization, and why it is important to create the right environment for them so that they can contribute to the growth of the organization as well as their own professional growth. So if we just step back and look at the journey of how diversity has been, has become a topic of importance in boardrooms and in senior management across organizations, they have also realized that while diversity is something that you talk about, you also need to walk the talk. You need to ensure that you create a corporate environment that fosters this, and also look at some very simple, basic requirements that are there. For example, there was a time in corporate India when you wanted to hire more women candidates for various roles, and this was not just in head offices or administrative offices, but also in factories. Now, one of the things that became a necessity there was, simple things like a nursing room or a daycare center, so that, the children could be looked after while the mothers were at work. So similarly, if you are hiring people with a physical disability, then, it is very important that they have access to washrooms that are suitable for them. And also, within the office or the factory premise, they are able to move without any impediments. So similarly, when we look at people who have recovered from mental illness, it is very important. I mean, there may not be much physical changes that you will need to make, but in addition to providing an environment for these people, you will also have to educate the rest of your organization, especially their managers, about how they need to be working with them. The corporate culture has to be something that should allow these individuals to perform. It should provide specific tools and structures that are important for both the candidates who come in who have recovered from mental illness, as well as their managers, peers, subordinates who will have to work with them. They also need to be cognizant of that. Now, typically, a lot of coaching will be needed. You will need to have employee assistance programs so that, they are able to ease into these jobs. And more importantly, you'll have to train the managers to spot signs of emotional distress. And that's a difficult thing. I mean, anything that's physically visible is easy to handle, but here we are talking of mental illness. And therefore, it is very important that we create an environment that empathizes, and takes care of them. Now, why should we go into all of this trouble? Why should we have diversity in our organization? Uh, Organizations have worked in the past that have had absolutely no diversity. Why is it becoming the buzzword now? Why is it important that we do it now? It's very important because, today there is a need for employees to have trust and commitment with the organization. And when you work in an environment that fosters diversity, that encourages diversity, and not just puts it on PPTs, but walks the talk with top management and everybody else getting deeply involved in that, it builds more commitment, more trust. Also, because once you have an organization which has a diverse culture with people coming from different backgrounds, the creativity and the innovation quotient goes up. And this is primarily because people come in with different sets of experiences. They are able to look at the same problem in different manners and come up with far better and innovative solutions. So it benefits the organization from a financial point of view, or from a operational point of view, that some of these divergent views can bring in far better solutions to problems that the organization is tackling. Obviously, there's better decision making. There is, the employees feel. I mean, you may not be part of diversity recruitment, so to say, but you will also feel very happy that you're working in an organization that is fair and values its employees. So these are the reasons why it's very important to foster diversity. And in order to foster diversity, you need to have people who have recovered from mental illness forming part of that diversity requirement of your organization. So having established these two, where is it and how is it that Recovery Hub can help with this process? Now, I don't want to steal some of Namrata's thunder, but she will explain the process of how we go about interviewing candidates who are looking to join corporate and figure out what are their skill sets, what is the kind of jobs that they can do, and then basis that we recommend it to the companies that work with us, so that they are able to employ these people gainfully and get better results from them. The second part, which is a far more important part, as I was explaining earlier as well, is in terms of creating that environment, Recovery Hub can help in a very, very big way. We can be partners with you as you onboard these people and, work with the entire organization in trying to foster a culture which enables, people with mental illness to work successfully and contribute to the organization. So these are broadly the areas that I wanted to touch. And I feel that it's a requirement of today that organizations have more diversity. It makes them more successful. And Recovery Hub can help these organizations move in that direction as far as it comes to mental illness, people who have recovered from mental illness.
That's great, Mahesh. Thank you so much. So I guess you've given them a good idea how to go about it. And I think it's for the organizations to go back and think within their own teams. Is this something they would like to adopt? And if they need to, then, obviously previously we did not have, as far as I have explored in India, I've only seen a couple of vocational rehabilitation programs, which are very different. That is something like I think NIMHANS is doing, where they have people with special needs and all, enrolling in a 1-year program where they're taught few skills, and then some organizations have tied up with them and take on them, because that's more like a certified thing. But here we are talking about a more functional group, who are kind of, Namrata will talk about the eligibility criteria and so on. So it's an interesting concept that needs to kind of take forward. Another thing I wanted to just mention in the introduction is all of us except Dr. Arif here are IMB alumni as well, and that is how we kind of got together as well. And obviously Dr. Arif has his own extensive experience at different fields, so it's a very valuable team we've got here. Next, I would like to welcome Dharmender, who is the marketing advisor to Recovery Hub, and he actually does so many things that I cannot make a list of, so I'll let him introduce himself. And And then I would like him to talk about a little bit about how is Recovery Hub and its services going to be different from the regular employment engagement programs that the corporates, have. Either the corporates are doing it themselves or they've outsourced those programs to others. Because when you look around it, it's all about mental health. When I just, even open LinkedIn, I just probably it's my interest that it shows, but looks like every organization is definitely looking at mental health, but it's just different strategies they are using. And we just want people to know how is our service going to be any different from the existing ones. Welcome, Dharminder.
Thank you, Dr. Daljeet. Thank you, Arif. And thank you, Namrata, for hosting this. I welcome all the guests who is attending this session today. Just to give you introduction, I connected with Dr. Daljeet when there was IMB events, and I was part of the Hyderabad cohort as well. And then during COVID, she came up with the idea of starting Recovery Hub, and at that was the time all of us, many of us, were seeing people going through trauma, losing their personal, close relatives and all, and losing jobs, and then people were going workless, jobless. Business was suffering. And then it was an optimal time to start something like this. And even today, when we just in last 10 days, we would have heard thousands and thousands of people laid off at, I don't want to name the company. These are all FANG and NASDAQ listed companies, or companies who are about to go to the IPO. And, all this gives a lot of, unwell-being on the mental health of the employees and the organization as such. What we do at just give you my introduction. It's been very kind of Daljeet for saying I do a lot of work. I actually I'm only keen to support in some way. I'm a marketing and business development expert. I had been a co-founder myself, and I'm a mentor at NSRCL, IIM Bangalore, and a couple of B schools. So I worked in Recovery Hub on making sure what could be the marketing strategy, reaching out to the employers and employers. What we actually do in Recovery Hub is help employees set up their employment goal, offer them mentoring sessions, offer them guidance on new skills. So besides new skill on getting employment, when I get to connect with someone, I understand if they have a good writing skill, they can become content writer. If they have good social skills, they can become creators, and creator D2C, and creating and publishing your own product is also very easy. Helping them selling online, helping them set up a small business themselves beyond employment also, and this, of course, finding them courses online and going towards that direction. So entire journey of getting back into their ecosystem on work and starting earning. So moment somebody start earning, money also makes a lot of difference when your mental well-being is suffering and you start earning, and then it works out in most of the ways. And during the employment also, we provide support and help with the work together with the employer, so that the employee gets adjusted to the ecosystem and environment there, negotiate a gradual return and entry to their workplace, look at the possible and reasonable support systems for them. We also help them in identifying difficulties and work towards solution in solving those difficulty. And for the organization, Recovery Hub provide sessions for their employees, set up support system for the employees to create meetings, act as a mediator, and now we started webinars like this, where we would like to conduct more and more sessions along with employers, so the entire employer and employee ecosystem works. We also started working with legal partners and professionals to come along in this effort and initiative to make the entire ecosystem of mental well-being successful Recovery Hub.
Thanks, Dharmender. As you were talking, it just came to me. Remember when you kind of joined us, and I think I asked you to do a couple of mentoring sessions for our service users, and you were asking me how should I talk to them, and how will they react and all. It just brought back to me. So can you briefly share your experience as to what were you anticipating and how did it turn like? Because I think people have a very different view when we talk about people with mental health issues.
So when I joined Dr. Daljeet, it was more of let's do something about this problem. I was not very well aware how these people would be and what exactly I'm going to do. I just said let's do it for the noble cause. And while you answer, I answer it differently. I got to mentor a very young female who was going through some challenges, and she started working on social media. She developed a very good content for our social handles. And while talking to one of the co-founders based out of Hyderabad only, he was also an early age startup. He was looking for someone who can be work as a freelancer because his budgets were limited, and help him in social media. And then she worked on that project, and now she's placed in a very good college in Australia. She's working, and probably she'll thrive very well. See, I always was very skeptical. How will these people react? They're very kind. They're very nice. They're just going through a bad phase, and the recovery hub and this mentoring session just help them to move away from this, move on to their life and move away from these bad phases.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So what I want the people to take, the organizations to, do you want to just mute because there's a lot of background noise at your end, I think. Thanks. What I want the organizations to be mindful of is the target, the service users that we have here, our cohort is not about people who'll come to you and are sitting there and are lost in their thoughts, or they're so depressed they can't concentrate, or they are having delusions or hallucinations. We're not talking about that group. We are talking about people who've actually recovered from that, and they are stable. A psychiatrist has to go ahead and things like that. There's a lot of filter that goes on before we even start the occupational health assessments, and if we feel someone's not to that point, they can be passed back to the mental health expert saying they're not ready for work yet. So all that happens already at our end. Then an occupational health report and the process, then Namrata will explain. So it is a clientele who's actually very functional, who's ready to work. We're talking about youngsters, people who are already graduates and doing lots of things. So it just feels like with that support, they can thrive, and we're taking that as our initial cohort. Obviously, we'll be, looking at expanding later on. It's just for everyone to have, an understanding of whom we are talking about. I've not actually told the audience. If you have any question and answers, please, you can type that in the section. We'll be addressing that later. Now, I would like to welcome Namrata. And she's been, with me from the inception, I think, and she's worked really, really hard into the operations part. So she's the operational main lead of Recovery Hub. Obviously, this is, more of a voluntary thing because, she's into her own job and all. So Namrata, please talk about yourself. And after that, if you could, give us a detailed view of the process of entry, the assessment, the mentoring part, and how it goes, the flow chart into employment. And if you can, at the end, you can probably just give us a little bit, idea about if people want to volunteer for us, how can they do that? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining. So my experience has been in construction, and I've been handling operations, construction management most of my career. So when this initiative came up, as Dharmender explained, during COVID time, and Dr. Arif also explained, what we thought was it would definitely give some sort of, okay, even if nothing happens, just make people more empathic and more tolerant towards people who are other people who are suffering from any sort of mental health issues. And yeah, so that was the main that was my main reason of joining and helping in any way I can. So since only Dr. Daljeet and Dr. Arif are from this medical background, the rest of us just support in any way we can, and as per our reach of things. So that was my intro. Let me just start the presentation. 1 minute.
And obviously, Namrata, you've done the initial kind of screening and assessments for few people, isn't it? So maybe
Yes.
you can touch upon a little bit, your own personal experience also.
Yes, I'll get to that. 1 minute. Can you see the PPT?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just a screenshot of what a person or a service user's journey will be in the recovery after joining, after the person is referred to Recovery Hub. So preferably a psychiatrist. We would want one psychiatrist to refer their client to us. We say psychiatrist because they would be the treating psychiatrist, and they would know whether the person is stable enough to actually start working, and is safe enough to work, and is also in a way a little bit at least protected from all the stress of working. At least can manage that. That's why this particular reference from a psychiatrist. So once they are referred, we do occupational health assessment, like Dr. Arif had explained, where we ask them about we ask the service user itself what their problem has been, how long, and whether this feels stable enough. Is there any problem in whether do they find any issues in basic skills of reading, writing, talking, and speaking, etc. So then once this assessment is done, this assessment is actually, then a report is created by our occupational health assessor right now, Dr. Arif. Once that is done,
have to use the mic closer to you, Namrata, as you were doing before.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So then once the report is generated, we have a short mentoring session from one of our experts. It could be one of our team members or any volunteers and everything. They would basically so in the assessment report also we ask what the target industry is like. Dr. Daljeet had explained that there was one person who wanted to get into entrepreneurship, or there's another person who wants to get into hospitality industry, like that. There could also be people who just want some sort of internship or some sort of training and just a voluntary work, just to get some sort of confidence in starting or restarting their professional career. So once this the mentoring session is also on these lines. Once the mentoring session is completed and our mentor understands in detail what this service user wants, then we can recommend this person for any job or any internships, whatever the person wants. This service user or our client will then take up the job after all these assessments are done, and based on the recommendations that are created in the report by the occupational health assessor. Like how the recommendations could be like Dr. Arif was explaining, like lesser stress earlier, lesser job load earlier, and then gradually increase it. Or if the person is triggered by some sort of external, I would say a small example like migraine. People have a lot of problems with the light around, so especially in outside countries, they're more sensitive towards this, and they create the space with darker darker setting so that the person doesn't get triggered, something like that. So this person takes a job with all these recommendations which are given to the employer, and then the recovery hub will support both the employee and the employer for the next 3 months for any sort of support that they might need in handling and day-to-day issues with each other. Yes. Then what will be our eligibility? Our eligibility main thing would be a person should be stable in their mental state. Here again, the service user or the client has to have a functional mental health illness, like Dr. Arif was explaining. I'm sure the psychiatrist, Dr. Daljeet and Dr. Arif will again, if there are any questions, they can explain the difference between functional and the medical, clinical mental health. Now, this person has to be stable. Then we are currently focusing on people who are between 18 to 45 years, any gender, urban living, and educated, so that they understand what the employers are saying. That's all. And unemployed or is keen on returning to employment. Yeah, so stable enough I've already covered. And they can, so in our occupational health assessment form, they can also list if they mention that if they want to just start work, or like I said, internship, or they want to do any sort of training or learn new skills, for which also we have partners who can arrange these training sessions. Who we exclude? We are currently excluding the people with learning disabilities, autism, dementia, acute psychosis, active suicidal ideation, drug addiction, and alcohol addiction. Basic reason being it will be even more difficult to handle cases with these issues. We don't want employers to suffer, yes, diversity, yes, but ultimately people have to work. So the employers need not suffer while being more diversified.
I would just like to add a comment here, Namrita.
Yeah.
I mean, there are already, services where they are helping people with learning disabilities and all that. So I don't agree with the concept of employers having to suffer. It's just that what Recovery Hub is able to support with currently is more for that group that we have selected. And as I told you, in the future, I think, if we are expanding, we would be starting to include the other groups as well. I mean, we don't want them to be at any disadvantage. The only thing is when you're talking about the functional and organic, dementia and things like that, where there's some cognitive impairment, I think they need a lot more support in the jobs. And I think for us with Recovery Hub just starting fresh now, we are looking at somewhere, where practically we are able to help them and do justice. And definitely these groups also need help, and there are some services doing that, or we will in later stage be looking at including these as well.
Yes, okay.
Absolutely.
My bad, I could not explain the exclusion criteria very well.
That's fine. If it's okay, I'll just make another point to that. With the exclusion criteria, if you look at learning disabilities, autism, dementia, psychosis, there are two aspects to it. One is they are individuals with complex mental health issues. So the level of expertise needed to rehabilitate them is much higher compared to the more bog standard mental health issues like anxiety disorders and depressive disorders. So at this time, I think the level of skills required for the individuals, the group that are rehabilitating on one side, and the employers on the other side are still, it's still to evolve. I'm not saying it won't happen, it will take time. And at some point in the future, when the groundwork in terms of getting our processes right with the rehabilitation is set, then we can sort of slowly expand and add the more complex side to it. The second thing is that in these conditions that you've listed out, there is the other aspect in terms of the safety aspect of it. So individuals may not necessarily be able to understand or comprehend the safety aspects of working safely in a workplace. So it's important to rehabilitate somebody, but at the same time, the safety aspect comes into it. So when you talk about occupational health, there's the occupational health aspect and the occupational safety aspect of it. So there may be challenges in terms of managing the safety side. So making sure that the individual is safe to work there, and the individual can safely provide a service for their clients. So both those aspects need to be considered as well. And at this point, where there are potential safety risks to the individual and to the employer, that justifies this exclusion criteria.
Yeah. So in fact, Namrita, it's good that you brought that up, because we are able to explain both myself and Arif as to why. So it's a Q&A that would have come from any organization, that being part of organization have asked that. So thanks for that.
Yes. Okay. Yes, what Dr. Daljeet wanted me to also touch upon was the different ways to volunteer to Recovery Hub or for Recovery Hub. One way you could, so we want volunteers in all aspects of everything, like, starting from marketing, day-to-day operations, mentoring would also be something that you can do for our clients. Or you could just get connected and help us in getting job placements through your network and connections. And then for any company or any NGO to run, you need donations, money. So for getting donations also, the different ways to reaching out is through our we have a form in our website. You can email to us at this contact@recoveryhub.in or call us on this number. Okay. Yes, that was that. If anyone has any questions.
Yeah, so we'll go to that at the end. Thanks, Namrita, for presenting. And we also have very important team member, which is Mr. Srinivasan. He's been the mentor to me personally and also to Recovery Hub. And Srini obviously wanted to talk as well, but for his own health reasons, he could not. I'm so glad that he was still able to come up and be part of this. So welcome, Srini. I mean, if you have any couple of words or any comments, you can. But it's so nice that you've been able to attend this.
Yes, thank you, Daljeet, for introducing me as a mentor. In fact, strictly I came in as your personal mentor. And then you pulled me into this and I got hooked. And I can tell you that is one of the most wonderful initiatives that you have taken up, and I'm very proud to be associated. As such, I don't know much about the subject, but one other thing I know about it, how to keep you motivated to continue in an early stage of a novel concept like this, and the whole team should pursue this noble cause irrespective of kind of response you get or don't get, because it is a new thing and anything new takes time to evolve and educate more people. And I'm very glad that this webinar is a good beginning, and I'm sure that we'll have many more such webinars. Hopefully in that I should be able to talk. Today I'm a little bit not okay to continue talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I can see that Jaya is also here, and she's our legal partner. Jaya, I've just clicked on the talking part there. If you have any comments or anything you would like to, we would be happy and welcome you for that.
Hi Daljeet, so happy to be part of this initiative, and hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Jaya. Yeah, if you want to put your video on, you can do that as well. I think you're on mute, Jaya.
Sorry. Yeah, hi. Hi everyone. So happy to be part of this panel discussion. It's a good experience for me. So as a lawyer, I just wanted to, I think Dr. Arif in one of his PPT mentioned that the current legal framework focuses more on penalties rather than rehabilitation. I just wanted to add one that, the policies and the legislations, although it's not there, but they are taking initiatives to bridge that gap. And now, we have laws and regulations in place which gives incentive to all the companies, saying that if you spend more on these activities in rehabilitation of people with special needs, they can club that in the CSR expenditure. So, and also, the Supreme Court through judgments and all, they are playing an active role in taking this and handholding and being a proactive partner in the whole process. So let's see. Let's hope for the best. And with I just hope we have more outfits like Recovery Hub who are there to handhold people with special needs.
Thank you, Jaya. Thanks for your input. In fact, we took reference from quite few of our discussions with her in terms of, how things are in India.
I know.
Because our experience, both myself and Arif, our training has been in the UK, and then, I've relocated. Arif still is in UK. So it's really nice to know, how it works in India, so that
and it's a great learning experience for me also on a personal level and also as a lawyer.
Yeah, thank you. So if any of the attendees have any questions, because I've not seen anything put in the box, if you have anything, you can type now. So I'll wait a couple of minutes for that. Otherwise, obviously this was more of an introduction about Recovery Hub to the organizations. And we've recorded this and we'll try to share it on the social media as well, so people know at least, the basic concept of what we are doing. And we will be doing a lot more webinars and would be, including people hopefully, from HR and other organizations, and all to understand their view and also probably learn from them and maybe accommodate, depending on how things are in India, because I think that practical aspect is very important. So before we wrap up, is there anything else any other panelists wants to add or comment on?
Do follow us on social media handles. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. And you can chat with us there. You can follow us on the updates on the next webinar also there.
Very apt coming from a marketing advisor. Thanks for that. That was really required. Yeah. So if there's nothing else from others, I would like to thank all the panelists for being part of this and giving their precious time. I know it's a weekday. Initially, we were thinking of doing on a weekend and just felt like probably, that's not a good idea. People might want to use it for their own recreational purpose. So really grateful for everyone to join, and really thank all the attendees as well. And we will share our next webinar, the upcoming webinars soon. And Namrita's already shared our contact details. So please get in touch if there are any clarifications required or you want to know more about us. We have our website recoveryhub.in. So do look at that. So I think we will wrap up now and say bye and have a good day, all of you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. See you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.